Okay, this event could not happen without the help of the Springfield Public Library Foundation, so yay to them. And it could also not happen without the very generous support of Literary Arts. So I'm going to hand over to Director of Programs for Writers, Susan Moore, and she's going to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here. Thanks everyone for coming, and I want to thank the Springfield Public Library and Mark Riddle for hosting us. I'm really excited to be here today with the 5 finalists for the Ken Kesey Award. The Oregon Book Awards is a program of Literary Arts. Literary Arts is a community-based nonprofit arts organization, and our mission is to engage readers, support writers, and inspire the next generation with great literature. The Oregon Book Awards are presented every year for some of the finest writing by Oregon's authors. And usually in non-pandemic times, we take authors around the state for the Oregon Book Awards author tour. I think I remember a tour in Astoria with Lydia and Vanessa several years ago. So it's great to be able to still be at a library, as it were. And I really appreciate Mark and the library for helping us put this together. So we won't be able to gather in person for the Book Awards ceremony this year. So the 2021 Oregon Book Award winners will be announced on May 2nd, 2021 on a special episode of the Archive Project, which will air on OPB radio at 7 p.m. and that's a Sunday. It's an hour-long show and it'll be hosted by Omar El-Akkad and Elena Passarella. And it will feature readings from Oregon Book Award winners, archival audio from previous Oregon Book Award ceremonies, and also an interview with CES Wood recipient Molly Gloss. So you can listen on the radio wherever you listen to OPB, or you can stream it live at opb.org. So now, Mark, I'll turn it back to you and you can introduce these wonderful authors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah. All right, we are going to get started. Our first author today is Chelsea Beaker. Chelsea Beaker is from California's Central Valley. She is the recipient of a Rona Jaffe Writers Foundation Award, and her fiction and essays have been published in Granta, McSweeney's, Catapult Magazine, Electric Literature, and Joyland, among others. So, thank you so much for being here, Chelsea, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm so happy to be here with all of you today on this beautiful day. It's such an honor to be a finalist for this award among writers that I have admired for a really long time. Jen was just reminding us that the first people she met in Oregon when she first moved here were Vanessa and I, and that's my same experience. So. And that was a long time ago. That was almost 11 or 12. Yeah, I think 11 years ago. So to be here together now feels really special. And just knowing their work and Lydia's work and for so long is just, I'm excited to hear them read and feeling just a lot of goodness inside about all of that. So I'm happy to be here and I'm gonna read something I haven't read before, but I'll try it out. So my novel is called Godshot. And I think what you need to know, since I will be reading sort of from the middle of the book, is that the book really follows the journey of a teenage girl, sort of in this cult-run, droughted, small, tiny, kind of devastated rural farming town in California. And she is pregnant. These are the details you must know. She's pregnant, she's pretty far along, and she's going to a midwife for the first time, for sort of her first medical check, if you will, because previous to this, she's had no medical attention or any education around birth or anything. So this is sort of that moment, and hopefully it'll make sense. I sat in the passenger seat as Florin parked us in front of an abandoned lone blue barn I'd passed a million times. It used to belong to the Sander family, dairy people, before they left town after the first bad drought, saying they didn't like Vern and his ways. I'd never thought of them again other than to pray for their deliverance, and certainly never realized the barn was now inhabited for a very different cause. Farm of Spiritual Birthing and Uterus Celebration was written on a little wooden sign over the door. Well, now this is happening, Florence said. Appears to be, I said. She opened the door for me. I tried to imagine she was my partner, the father of the baby, perhaps. This was just a normal appointment. Ask your doctor about cord clamping. Ask your doctor about vernix practices. What happens to the placenta? Bring a cooler for transportation if you wish to eat it. My magazines had whole checklists you could cut out and bring with you, but I had forgotten them all. Inside were Hazel's doulas and several other women I had never seen, lit up from somewhere unearthly, their cheeks sun-flushed. They wore t-shirts that said things like "The Clitoral Truth" and "Feminist Killjoy" tucked into wide-leg canvas pants, and they smiled with their heads cocked to the side, lips pressed in feminine knowledge. Hazel hugged me and led us to the back room. She patted my belly. That baby in there wants to be a person in the world, I can tell. In the room, there was a poster advertising the Womb Continuum class and little twiggy flowers in mason jars on every windowsill, a double bed with a pure white duvet. Everything smelled of peppermint and baked bread. She poured cucumber water from a pitcher into a glass, and I downed it in a loud, shameless gulp. The water was crisp and cold. The more I drank, the more I wanted. I thought of how my mother used to drink alcohol as if it were water. No hesitation, no savoring, just pure need. More, I said, and she gave me more. She took a cloth and wiped dirt from my face. Pregnant women need a ton of water, she said. I hope you've been watering that little baby in there. I pictured myself pouring soda on a seed in the ground and expecting a garden. Useless. Perhaps the strange popping I'd been feeling was just the baby signaling for water, begging for it, and there was not enough. You can wash here too before you leave if you want. Only if you want, no judgment. There's this weird feeling in my stomach, I said quietly. I mean, it could just be gas, it probably is, but what if it's not? What if I'm doing this all wrong? Pop, 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 she said. She tapped on the drum of me, enthusiasm unthwarted. Like that? I nodded. That's your babe kicking. It's saying, here I am, Mom, pay attention to me. It's moving in there, I said. This possibility felt obvious to me suddenly. Of course it was moving. Hadn't the Mama magazines mentioned this would happen? Yet I had felt certain these very normal things wouldn't happen for me. I had dreaded deep down that this would never move, that I would not be a good enough host. But here it was moving despite everything. Goosebumps sprang up on my arms and legs. I wasn't in control of anything about the person inside of me, a relief and a terror. Babies are known to masturbate in the womb, if you can believe it. They lick the wall of the womb, they suck their thumbs. It's incredible. Oh, you poor thing. Did you think something was wrong? Just kicks. Poor thing. I smiled at her, but I hated those words. I wanted her to see me as a glowing mama in a new bodycon dress showing off my bumps, smiling dear husband on my arm. Nursery almost complete. I wanted to put my feet up in my new rocking chair that I would nurse in and think of baby names, think of nothing but the swell of my feet. But instead, poor thing. Is she gonna be too small to push this thing out? Florin asked, looking at my crotch. A woman from Fresno had her babe in here a few days ago, a doula cut in. Her hair was pinned to the side of her head in little bushes over her ears. 11 pounds vaginally. She looked dreamily at the ceiling, towards some unknown doula heaven of elastic vaginas, still in awe. We made her placenta pills. It was a gorgeous placenta. That's a big-ass baby, Florence said. They're all coming in from the city now that unmedicated birth is in style again, Hazel said. She did amazing. Her mantra was, I'm going to get enormous. She kept saying that while pushing. I'm getting enormous. Never seen a dilation like that. He came right out. What if I can't do it? Nope, Hazel said, don't entertain that thought. Don't give it an ounce of power. Your thoughts create reality. If my thoughts created reality, I wouldn't be in this situation now, I thought. I lay down on the bed and she took my blood pressure. Good, she said. Then she pulled out a wand-looking thing. Time to hear the heartbeat. The heartbeat. This was another way I could fail. The baby could have a heartbeat, but not the right kind. Perhaps it could have no heartbeat. I had just felt the popping minutes ago, but now I didn't. So maybe in the last 30 seconds, it had decided to stop. I don't want to, I said. Come on, Florence said. This is the fun part. I sat up, my own heart skipping too fast. I wanted out of there. That's okay, Lacey May, Hazel said, putting her hand on my shoulder. We should probably put together a birth plan for you. I want you to think about your ideal birth. Just meditate on it. I'll do whatever you want me to do. I got off the bed, anything to leave. Take a walk, listen to your body, to your baby. Listen to the baby? Of course, she said. Your baby has all sorts of things she wants you to know. I mean, I said, I just didn't know I was supposed to. It annoyed me a little bit to be told to listen to something that was not going to speak outright, just like I was always told to listen to God, to decode divide messaging from dust-filled air. We walked back to the car. Florence started the engine and scanned the radio. We sat for a minute. My mom loves that shit, she said. All the oils and body positivity. I don't know. I'd want a real doctor, but that's me. I thought of Hazel at the Yoni Magic meeting, how she had looked at all of us. She believed in us fully. I had never met someone like her, and it seemed I could find the ends of my pain if she was there to hold my hand. I like it, I said. You can tell she knows things. I hope so, Florence said. Wait. I opened the door again, got out of the car. My body took me back into the farmhouse, back into the room where Hazel was making notes on a chart. She looked up. Forget something? I lay across the bed and pulled up my dress. She turned the Doppler on. It sounded like radio static. She moved the wand around my small dome, smeared with cold jelly. I craned my neck to watch, and I felt I was out of my body looking at someone else. The faintest brown lines spread from my navel. My skin looked tight and pulled. My thighs were larger, meatier than ever before. It seemed to me I was turning into a series of lumps. I didn't understand how I was only going to get much, much larger from here. It seemed impossible. I liked it though. I looked nothing like the girl that had lain on the shed floor. It takes time to find the heart sometimes, she said. She looked up at the ceiling and let her hands guide her. Her eyebrows twitched and the softness of her tunic rubbed my skin. She worked a minute longer. The walls were closing in. Here it was, my punishment. I braced. I saw my pink, unformed baby floating in the boiling, toxic waters of me, too hot to hold. But then a quick two-step, a sharp gallop. Hazel smiled like she'd expected this sound. To her, this very routine sound. Strong. It did sound strong. It sounded like rain. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. A big silent hand for Chelsea Beaker. Yay! That was great. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to keep on moving on. We're going to get Genevieve up on screen. Yay! Okay, so originally from Alabama, Genevieve Hudson earned an MFA from Portland State University and has received Fulbright, MacDowell, and Vermont Studio Center fellowships. She is the author of Pretend We Live Here, Stories and Lives in Portland, Oregon. Boys of Alabama is her debut novel. Take it away, Genevieve, and thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I want to, first of all, say, Chelsea, that was so amazing. I always love when I get to hear you read. I love that novel so much. And I feel really lucky to be here among all these other finalists, many of whom I know dearly and whose work I really admire. So I'll just get right into reading. This is the novel I'll be reading from, Boys of Alabama. I don't think you need to know very much about where I'm starting from. It's close to the beginning. It's good to know that Max is our narrator, and he has just moved to rural Alabama, a football-loving town where he doesn't know anyone, and he's moved from Germany. He has just encountered in class a young kind of queer person who's very intriguing to him, but he's starting to become friends with the football team and being pulled into that world. And he's also nursing a secret power of his own that will come out later. Later that night, the boys pushed a cooler off the back of a Ford pickup truck and carried it down a red dirt road. The night was tar black with stars punched into it. Something unsettled Max about the smells, like rotting wood, wet hair, and skin that burned and blistered. He tasted mud on the roof of his mouth. There was a strand of grass in his molars. Davis said, feels like we're walking on a dog's tongue, all teeth and heat and sweat. The sound was running roaches smashed beneath steel-toed boots and wind slapping at the bushes, and the kind of dead silence that only comes past midnight in rural parts of America. Country ballads lifted from the speakers somewhere in the dark ahead. A fire snapped. It guided the way like a door cracked open at the end of a hall. The field, which belonged to Cole's father, careened into black for acres on either side. It had taken nearly an hour of winding down skinny roads with many right turns to get here. Nothing had been marked. The boys just knew the way. The fields had once contained cotton, but Max didn't see any white heads reaching up for their stems. He saw shadows. He saw his hand only when it was right in front of his face. The land was undressed by all the darkness, like it'd been stripped down, like it'd been left to go wild. The boy Max rode with said, "Where are the ladies at?" Max thought girls would be at the patch of bald earth that'd been trodden down into something worn and grassless for socializing, for late-night whatevers. A pit for fire had about a dozen boys from the team circled around it. No girls, a few logs, a shed with a broken window. The same song from the barbecue was still on. Or was it a different song? The chords were so full of longing, Max felt like he was right beside the girl singing about her sexy man and his tractors and his fishing lines and his big red dogs. A boy named Price put his elbow on Max's shoulder, leaned in so he could whisper. The bill of his dirty cap edged into Max's forehead. Price said through his stutter, "Looks like someone brought the goddamn witch." Max's eyes found an image on the other side of the fire, the shock of Pan and his fishnets. Pan's legs were crossed at the knees. He sat on the back of the four-wheeler next to Lorne, whose hair was orange as the flames. Lorne's wide chest was covered in a camo shirt with a deer running across it. Lorne, the judge's son. He was a sluggish and muscled boy who seemed to have as much personality as a blade of sun-dead grass. Nothing like his sinewy father, who Max had seen on the sideline of football practice, clapping, whistling. When Lorne had joined his father near the water cooler, Max had watched them huddle and what he had come to recognize as prayer. Hands clasped to shoulders, heads bowed. Lorne prodded Pan with his hooded eyes. His lips opened and closed, and something Max recognized as hunger. Lorne was quiet and cagey any time Max had been around him, but that night he seemed to have a lot to say to Pan. Pan stroked his tuft of coal-colored hair as he listened to Lorne, nodding. Pan's back was ramrod straight, and he moved from his core with an elegance that seemed acquired from other worlds, movies maybe, or books on dancing. Max wondered if he was a dancer. He pictured him spinning in the middle of an empty room with four beautiful white walls. He might leap into the air and land spinning, or land in a split or on the tips of his toes. Max thought Pan would look beautiful in a room with four white walls because his features were so drawn and heavy. There was something in them that sprung out like they were shouting the word, "Look." His mouth was red as a cherry pit, and that night it was painted even redder. Max could see, or did he just remember, a black mole shaped like America beneath Pan's left eye. Pan tapped at the four-wheeler's bumper with the heel of a fat army boot. He and Lauren appeared to be flirting. The flirting seemed very clear to Max. He glanced at the other boys. Did they see the flirting too? The longer he watched, the clearer it became. Pan scooted from his seat and led Lauren into the tall grass. Price watched Max watch the two silhouettes disappear. Jesus H. Christ, said Price. He thinks he's a frickin' princess. Look at that outfit. What? Said Max, because the snap hiss of the fire ate the words from the boy's mouth, and plus, he was distracted. Can you say it again? I said, Princess over there wants to be a freak, and sometimes we let him. Price shrugged as if it were an inconvenience no one could do anything about. He spat a kernel from his mouth into the fire. The small black stones smoldered, and Max wondered what kind of freak Price let Pan be. A freak for sure, said Wes. He once lit his feet on fire and he just laughed as they burned. We could smell it. We poured beer on it, or who knows what would have happened to his toes. Yeah, but the freak didn't have any burn marks, a boy named Boone said. Like, what the actual F? I think he liked it, said Price. You know, he likes the pain. Max understood. He bit down on his tongue to remind himself just how much he liked the pain. Price's eyes were the striking green of a Mountain Dew bottle, and they danced with mischief. Had Price said, you'll know, as in one day Max will know too? He wasn't sure he heard it right. In there.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much for being part of this today. Yay! And what I didn't mention to everybody is that you actually do have reactions as well. So if you don't know about those, there is the reactions. And so you can give people a thumbs up, or you can give people cheering or hearts. There's lots of different ones. So yeah, thank you so much. That was great. And next up, we have Mark Savage. Mark Savage is an author and musician from Portsmouth, England. He lives in Portland, where he is a bookseller and co-host of the Mind Meld Fictional Film Club is his first novel. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. I just want to say a couple of things. Thank you to Springfield Public Library for having me. Librarians are heroes. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you to Susan and Literary Arts as well. I feel like being on this list with these cool people who happen to be amazing authors is such an honor. So I'm really glad to be here. I'd also like to quickly mention some friends of mine, the booksellers who were laid off by Powell's Books a year ago, many of whom are currently applying for their old jobs again this weekend. I miss them, miss seeing their faces, and I'm with them, and I want to draw some attention to that. And I'm going to wave to friends and family around the world. In England, some of you maybe a couple of gin and tonics in, some of you are in bed under duvets. Thank you for being here. It means a lot to me. My book, Fictional Film Club, is it's a novel made up of reviews of movies that don't exist. And I'm going to read one of those reviews. It is a French film directed by Chris Marker, who is real. It is called Le jour nous avons perdu un mois. My French is terrible. It translates as The Day We Lost a Month. And it came out, or didn't come out, in 1968. Here goes. Chris Marker emerged internationally in 1962 with La Jetée, which some of you may have seen. A short film composed of still photography and voiceover that tells the tale of a post-nuclear time travel experiment. While The Day We Lost a Month uses live footage rather than stills, like La Jetée, it has a weary narrator who tells a story over a sequence of images. They initially seem unconnected. An old lady feeds ducks. A couple stand under an umbrella. A man eats a hot dog on the bed of his truck. Children listen to a story in a classroom. A female voice explains, The Day We Lost a Month was in February. The governments of the world announced that they had made a discovery. The forthcoming November had vanished. They did not know how or why or what it meant. Their projections going forward to July, August, and September were normal. For October, their numbers oscillated violently. And then, where November should be, there was nothing. futurologists, meteorologists, astrologists, psychics, and analysts of the twitching codes of the markets all came to the same conclusion. November is gone, and we have 8 months to make a plan. We see more images. Now it is summer, a picnic on a roof in Paris. A woman tap dances in the street while a man plays a violin. Children kick a ball against a mural of Charles de Gaulle. The voice goes on. What can no November mean? Will we go to sleep for 30 days and wake up in December rested and dreamless? Will it just be a bump in the road that we can look back on and smile about? Will every year from now on jump from October to December? Can we just call December November and move on? Or would this mean that 1/12 of our lives were to be stolen? That is at least 6 years to a healthy Westerner. Where would those years go? For most people, even these felt like optimistic scenarios. Others didn't buy any of it. The images continue. A dog on a leash but with no owner, sniffing around a car wheel. A man removes posters from a bus shelter. A market trader sells fruit. Early government reports clearly designed to avoid panic were regarded as whitewashes. Television programs devoted segments to surviving the lack of November or denying the lack of November. Newspaper editorials blamed our disregard for the environment, or Zionists, or Islamist rebels fighting for a free Algeria or Palestine. Or they said that only the Soviets have the technology to remove a month from our calendar and from our lives. Protest marches against whomever, against whatever, for whichever reason, turned into riots. Deep down, we suspected that the authorities were as clueless as we were. More images, an empty stadium, a factory prints newspapers, headlines obscured, bird song at sunset. We hoped that we would wake up on the 1st of November in our beds as normal with nothing changed. But somehow this scared us too, that so much panicked energy could be devoted to such an anticlimax. By September, there were as many parties as riots. More images appear on screen. A man chops down a tree with an axe. A child watches cartoons and drinks milk from a bowl. Bugs Bunny is dressed as a girl. The speculations were rife. What if November does arrive and seems normal, but then, like a frozen lake with too many skaters, it caves in, leaving 5 billion people scrambling for the solid banks of October or December? In which direction should we swim? Will the current flow backwards or forwards? Will the water be too cold? Do we even have any idea of what time is and where it can go? Rumors said that the very rich would attempt to escape in space shuttles, or buy the services of quantum physicists who could provide them with a perpetual August to live in like an ageless, gated community. This led to vandalism of mansions and homemade bombs sent in elevators up to penthouse suites. The message was clear. If we're going, you're coming too. A line of people wait to vote outside a school. White clothes hang dripping on a line. A cat plays with a dead kingfisher. A group of revolutionaries in France successfully captured a used May Day. What was their intention? Might they be able to hold on to this chunk of 24 hours like a life raft? One theory was that they hoped to cool it artificially into a likeness of a November day. If successful, they would kidnap other days too, stockpiling as much as a week's worth, to be spread thinly across the expanse of where November used to be, like stepping stones. If it worked, the same could be done next year, by removing the occasional expired day at carefully selected intervals and refitting them with the correct weather, the correct ambience, the correct poetry, we could eventually build a makeshift November from leftover 29th of February and 18th of July and 26th of October, and knit the two halves of the year together into a navigable route. Each year we might do it with different days so that no one is left with a life of unbirthdays. But the French government, backed by NATO and China and with the quiet consent of the USSR, freed the May Day and killed the revolutionaries in a daring televised raid. The May Day was displayed by the French president. He stood behind a podium next to it as it wilted, withered and died in the September air. Time was slipping away. More images. A car drives in the rainy countryside. A film plays to an empty theater. Judy Garland clutches Toto. The American plan naturally involved a potentially suicidal act of heroism. A small group of elite Marines would be dropped by time plane into the day after October 31st to see what was there. This mission was named the October 32nd Drop and was deemed by many to be doomed. The men prepared, in an intensive camp that filled their brains with November residue. They showered in rainwater collected in Maine the previous All Saints' Day, and they ate Thanksgiving dinners every night. The theory seemed to be that if the men could arrive in the abyss with as much November as possible on them and in them, they might be able to survive in the void, even traverse it. But you can't water a desert, a man on television said. They left a week ago, and no reports have come back. Perhaps they have fixed the breach and wait for us on the other side. We might not know until our clocks rotate enough times for us to catch them up. Men in suits sit around a table, the aftermath of a street party. A soldier guards a gate with barbed wire across the top of it. October. Hysteria built. It was like a war had begun and no one had fired a shot yet. A move in the general direction of the West occurred as people all over the world felt that if November had gone, they might hide a little longer in the last strains of October as the sun dropped. Some headed east instead, towards oblivion. Some stockpiled food and drove to the hills. There was no suggestion that they would be any safer there. On television, a respected intellectual of some fame sucked on a cigarette and took questions from a studio audience. One said, maybe this is like the panic over the introduction of the Gregorian calendar. They thought they were losing 13 days of their lives, but they were not. The author smoked his cigarette down to the filter. He said, you can save your childhood photos from the fire. You can't save your childhood from the fire. Yesterday, you were a teenager in love on a mountaintop. Tomorrow, you are not. There is no villain, no cure, no fight, just death. The last scene of the film takes place in the center of Paris, the 31st of October. A crowd stands below the Arc de Triomphe, waiting. They wear hats and scarves or Halloween costumes. Some are a little drunk. Some sing along with a man who plays popular songs on guitar. He is dressed as a cat. A crying student is reassured by his friends. A man dressed as a soldier, who might actually be a soldier, starts a countdown. The crowd look at their watches or tentatively embrace. The countdown hits 0. The screen goes black. A deep chord, a low D, is held and somehow grows deeper and deeper without ever changing. The black screen somehow seems to grow even blacker. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. That was great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much to everybody who has spoken so far. There's been a few people who have popped in as we've been going along. So I just wanted to let everybody know that we are recording this, which is why I'm asking everybody to keep their videos off. We've got 2 more authors to speak, and after they speak, we will keep the room open for a little while, so we can, if people have some questions and want to have a bit of a chat, we can do that for a little bit of time, and I will stop the recording before that happens. So yeah, we won't be recording patrons or people who are watching, but right now, I'd like to welcome Vanessa Besselker to the stage. There she is. All right. Vanessa Besselker is the author of the novel Zazen, which won the Penn Robert W. Bingham Prize and the Great Offshore Grounds. Her short stories have appeared in Tin House and Ziziver, and her nonfiction in GQ, The Atlantic, Smithsonian, The Atavist, and was included in Best American Essays and the anthology Bitchfest 10 Years of Cultural Criticism. Okay, thanks so much for being here, and take it away.
Absolutely. And I share, what everybody said. It's great to be here with all of you. Yeah, I know all of the people who are up for this award, and yes on libraries, yes on the Powell's used booksellers. I also want to say that I was in Springfield recently because there was a strike for recognition with memory care workers down there that was very brutal and intense. And, the reason I mention that now is not for a bunch of, ridiculous virtue signaling. Some people might not consider that a virtue to be, but because the novel I wrote is really in many ways about class and about the way that different things affect us in our culture. So I'm going to try something that may or may not work. I'm going to read from actually a couple of different sections. And in those different sections, I just want to sort of stop and say maybe a little bit about why I'm setting the timer right now to go, deducting some. Okay. 15 miles south of Seattle and halfway across the Puget Sound to the west is Maury Island. Shaped like an arrowhead aimed at the mainland, green as the inner fold of a grass blade, it can be seen from the air, cradled in the crook of an elbow of water. Tourists ride over in ferries to watch for whales and UFOs. Jets turn around overhead on their final approach to the airport. Even on days when there is no rain, mist filters through the evergreens until it pulls apart like threadbare cloth and burns off. The wedding was to be held in the afternoon at Point Robinson, the site of an old fog signal station that once housed a steam whistle fed by coal fire and water to warn away ships. In 1897, at the dawn of massive capital expansion and speculation, the whistle sounded for 528 hours, nearly killing the man who had to shovel the 35 tons of coal. The cargo had to be kept from the rocks, and who can halt the lumbering desires of the world? In 1915, the lighthouse with its state-of-the-art fifth-order Fresnel lens was built. Powered initially by oil vapor lamps, its beacon could be seen for 12 miles. The lens was a perfect manifestation of Victorian technology, replacing simple flat lenses with faceted crystal domes, prisms cut into tiers that made it both astonishingly beautiful and a breakthrough in optics. The Fresnel lens had a theoretically infinite capacity to capture diffuse light and, by way of internal reflection, cast it like a spear through darkness. It lit stages in celluloid, Polaroid shots, and retinas for ID scan. And on Point Robinson, it lit the Puget Sound. Back across the Sound in Seattle, Livy looked out the window of her basement apartment. Her father was getting married that afternoon, and though it was already late April, a cold, wet breeze still whistled through the gaps in the caulking, turning her skin to goose flesh. A few feet away stood her sister Cheyenne, poorly slept but already dressed. "I'm freezing," said Cheyenne. "I'm turning on the space heater." "Turn on the oven, they charge us for electricity," said Livy. Cheyenne rolled her eyes but went over to the little white gas stove. Cranking the temperature to broil, she leaned back on the oven door so she could feel the heat on her hamstrings while the oven warmed. Yesterday, they'd spent the whole day picking rocks out of Livy's landlord's garden in trade for a patch of soil near the sunny side of the fence so that Livy could grow food. It wasn't political. Livy didn't care about pesticides or permaculture. She was just the cheapest person that Cheyenne had ever known. She lived off past-date groceries. She washed her clothes once a month with a teaspoon of dish soap in a tub. She made her own bras. Cheyenne was pretty sure she would have rinsed and reused dental dams if she thought it would work. Recently, Livy had become convinced that she could feed herself off 3 square yards of land. It was ridiculous, but since Cheyenne had appeared out of nowhere and moved in on her without any warning or rent, she didn't have much of a say. Taller and unfreckled, Cheyenne had chosen a rose-colored cap sleeve shirt with eyelets and a pair of black pinstripe suit pants for the wedding. She could pass in the crowd they'd be in today. Her secondhand clothes came off as vintage, while her misadventures in body art made her seem a fine vase, badly cracked and chipping, but a gritty accent to any room. "Cyril didn't come to my wedding," she said. "Why should I go to his?" "Did you invite him?" "Oh, hell no. He would have arrived like a lord and expected to walk me down the aisle. Here, let me give you away." "Oh, hey, Dad, I'm pretty sure you already did that." "Yeah, you're right," said Livy. "He would have." "So why are we going?" "I have the day off work and it's cheaper than a movie. I'm tired of ramen and hot dogs and there'll be rich people food, so I'm taking Tupperware." "Please don't make it obvious," said Cheyenne. "We're already going to look out of place." "Oh, why? Because you have jailhouse tats of hearts and clubs on your knuckles, or because I don't shave and look like a landscaper?" Cheyenne spread her fingers on her left hand. "Not just clubs and hearts. The one on the thumb is a diamond and the pinky is a spade. You just can't tell anymore." Cheyenne crossed to where she'd laid out her newly washed blue painter's pants and pulled them on over her long johns. "I'm going to the wedding because it's a show of support that costs me nothing. I don't know him. He's just a big blank. He's a disappointment. He gets a clean slate. At his worst, that's what he is. That's my wedding gift to him, a pass. It's the only decent move. I shot my better angels." "They're angels," said Livy. "You can't kill them. But if they were real, you could," said Cheyenne. Neither sister had seen their father since they were 14. The wedding invitation had arrived only 2 weeks before the date of the ceremony, on the heels of Cheyenne's reappearance, something their mother Kirsten considered prophetic. It was obvious, though, from the short window that the decision to include them was at best the result of a long debate, or at worst, just an afterthought. Their initial instinct had been to ignore it, and the invitation was repurposed as a coaster for days before it was seriously considered. But in the end, they could not ignore it, because it tapped at a hidden door. Shh, he is a king in a castle. He has only stashed us away in a village to keep us safe, and someday he will come to claim us and make everything all right. I'm going to skip around for the last couple of minutes because the character of the father is not an important character, but he's the catalyst to something. And he's kind of a character where it's like the golden apple thrown between, the three goddesses and says, okay, go off in the world, fight amongst yourselves for the scraps. And so I just want to read, now, of course, I can't find it. Darn it, where did I lose it? I swear I had this all marked exactly how I wanted it. And now look at me. Okay, this is the mother. What did she know about the other mother? Even if she had wanted to tell her daughters, she knew nothing. She knew that Anne was a Buddhist, but not what kind. She knew that Anne traveled extensively, but not how. She had married well or come into money. It was also possible that cut away from children and the need to shell out cash for a 2-bedroom apartment for 20 years, Anne had floated upwards in the realm of home ownership and 401ks, healthcare and cars with airbags. Kirsten looked at the back of her laptop where several windows were open. All healthcare plans, none of them worth anything. But she was tired of getting bounced on and off Medicaid every time some jerk in the legislature decided to redefine poor. Normally, she could weather the tides of eligibility, but not this time. Something was wrong and she didn't know what. Her stomach hurt. Her appetite flagged. She'd gone for her annual in the women's clinic and everything seemed fine, but she knew her body well and could feel a change. So here she was, looking for healthcare. She clicked through the benefits of each plan. Any pre-existing conditions? Well, I don't know. How about capitalism? Having scrolled through the online postings for jobs and now sitting with the nickel ads flayed to the classifieds, you can't just call anymore because that's a flag. You can't ask a reasonable question like what shift or how much an hour. That's a flag. You can't even walk in and fill out an application because everyone wants a resume. Whore out your personal charm just to wash dishes. A flexible team player with experience and a positive attitude, wanting to move ahead. She annotated in her mind. Flexible, she crossed out. No boundaries, no kids. Experienced, she crossed out. Needs no training. Positive attitude, she crossed out. Obsequious and yet entertaining. Wants to move ahead, she crossed out. In responsibility, but not pay. For years, Kirsten had made her own deal with the government. I fill out paperwork, you give me money to live on. It was an honest paycheck, in her opinion, a reallocation of federal funds to support the work they should be doing, and they weren't. How many nights had she spent on the suicide hotline, talking someone off the ledge? The number of times she'd opened for the early shift at the domestic violence center. Every night she had showed up, reliably alive. She met the messed up world intact and offered them in all hours humanity. They're lucky. They're lucky I only charge them food stamps and $8.50 a month. But none of it ever really looked real on paper. She closed the nickel ads. If you were over 25 and looking for a job, everyone expected a pageant of humiliation and a damn good story. Are you a recovering addict? Were you married to a bride hoarder? Are you a homemaker new to the market with an autistic son or husband with cancer? Tell me. No, really tell me. What exactly is your excuse for being 52 and broke? It's not like she didn't know how to weather the opinions of others. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yay, that was fantastic. That was great. Okay, we're going to move on to our final author of the day. And there she is, Lydia Yuknovic. Lydia Yuknovic is the nationally best-selling author of the novels The Book of Joan, The Small Backs of Children, Dora, A Head Case, the memoir The Chronology of Water, and The Misfits Manifesto. Okay, over to you, Lydia.
Thank you so much. Have I turned my mic on and everything? I think so. I want to thank Susan with Literary Arts as always, And to you, Mark, with the Springfield Public Library, thank you for having us. I have so enjoyed the pleasure of the company and the brilliance of the work of Chelsea and Genevieve and Mark and my partner in mayhem and not quite rightness, Vanessa. So it's thrilling for me to be here. And I wanted to add that your work, Chelsea and Genevieve and Mark and Vanessa, helps me not give up or give in. So I just want to express gratitude and love and solidarity to all workers and librarians. And in these brutal times, here's to briefly making art together and in the face of you know what. You don't need to know anything. It's a short story. I don't know anything either. The story is called Cusp. This bed smells of my skin. If I roll from my back to my belly, sweat cools near my spine. If I close my eyes, I'm like an animal up here in the heat and wood, baking in the daylight, my eyelids heavy, my thoughts slow and thudding. I'm waiting for dark, for the release, for breathing to animate me. This room and everything in it brings me closer to myself. From the frame of my attic window, I have imagined the inside out of this town, its heat rising from dust and scrub, its mindless longing for rain, its heart beating with dumb insistence. Outside my room, the world has expanded and contracted like the tight little fist of a child. I mean, years have gone by. I used to wonder who would want to live here, like this, some dried out town at the edge of the storyline, the nightly news, never quite making it into the picture. Its people crowding the geography somehow without evolution or design. There's a black and red sign over the door of the Texaco. It reads, Texas, USA. No city, no need. That's the whole deal stuck up there on a piece of metal the size of a license plate. Like thought stopped for gas and died at the pump. I remember the day I moved from my room downstairs up into the attic. It'd been my brother's. He'd gone to college, I'd hit puberty, the two motions smacking each other like electrical currents. The white canopy bed of a girl died that day because I never went back. The day I moved into my brother's room, I felt the wooden walls close in around me, as if a second body were there to hold me. The wood grain looked to me like dark, warm skin. Underneath the bed, I found artifacts from my brother's life, empty bottles and broken glass, trash, foil, used rubbers and tissues, tiny vials and a stretch of surgical tubing. It was a year before I found the needles, but it wasn't because I hadn't looked. He'd shown me his world when I was 10, knowing I would want it, I would love it, like I loved every moment of his existence. And to be in that attic, adoring him, the dark of the room, the broken rules, the thick, unbearable silence, the smells I didn't have names for, it was everything. I did find it, though. Wasn't I meant to? Wasn't I meant to prove my worth, to carry on the weight of that room? My brother, my other, I'm coming, I'm coming. On my 14th birthday, I got a bottle of Jack Daniels from my brother. He was home from college. He gave it to me in secret after dark, and we sat up in the attic window that connected our lives and drank until I was bleary and swollen. At some point after midnight, we became overheated and half clothed, and the heat works on you like that in that place, Texas. You shed layers like the skin of a snake until your body can bear itself. My brother drank and said, well, it's almost here, isn't it? You mean that? I pointed out the window toward the future, toward the place out in the dark where they were building it. It was a prison next to my house. In my youth, nights overtook me, And alone in the attic, my hands dug and carried me into worlds of my own making between my legs. And I brought my father's face into the walls now and again, as if he were watching or guarding or lifting me into darkness, away, away, out. The day they lodged the last brick, stretched the last of the chain link fencing, wound the last barbed loops overhead, I knew that my do-nothing life was about to be over. My dull, dead town had driven away like a herd of stupid, lost cows. Thanks, humans.
Thank you. That was amazing. Okay. Well, thank you so much to everybody for attending today. Just yay. Yeah, we'll hand back over to Susan right now. If Susan would like to say something.
Oh, I just want to thank you all for being here and to thank all the writers. That was an amazing, just a wild ride through all the finalists that are in fiction. So thank you so much for being here. And I did post a link in the chat, a couple of bookstores where you can find these authors' books, and of course, the library. So thank you so much. And just a reminder that the Oregon Book Awards show on the radio is May 2nd at 7 p.m. Thank you so much, Mark.